might come in the morning.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
I feel the need for speed.
Roads, where we're going, we don't need roads.
Snakes. Why did it have to be snakes?
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Film Nerd Podcast. I'm Vince. This is episode 34, and I am joined tonight by a repeat guest, and actually, you were my last guest. I have since we talked about Jackass Forever. I don't know. I think that was 2 months ago. That I just haven't had a chance to put another episode out. Landon Defever, how you doing?
It's good to be back. It's been too long.
It has. It's been too long for me. I haven't been talking about movies in a while, but like I told you, things get away from me, and you got other stuff going on. But I'm glad to have you on tonight. We're going to be talking about some fun things here, right? We're going to be talking about our favorite movies of 2021.
Yes.
How you feeling about 2021 as a whole coming out of that year here for movies?
I think for a lot of people, and looking at the grand scheme of 2021 to 2020, I think we can all just agree that this was a transitionary year. And I think we can say that politically, we can say that COVID wise, we can say that movie wise. Like 2020 was like very much a year of a lot of chaos, a lot of getting out of like the worst of it and trying to rebuild a little bit. We're not back to normal yet, but we're still trying to find a groove especially in the world of streaming and theaters being shut down and then coming back and readjusting to the world around us. So better than last year, but still has some work to do and some ground to build. I'm very excited about this year, 2022, as far as what's coming out down the pipeline. Just for now, though, I feel like, you know what? I have a solid top 10 that I'm really happy with. So I'll put it there.
Yeah, I don't know, because I was looking back before I started recording, or before you even came on Zoom. I was checking out my 2020 list and kind of comparing, the top half or even the top 10 to 20 of this year's list compared to 2020. And there were, I feel like overall, more movies that I enjoyed from this year, but maybe fewer movies that were like really, really great. I think there was just a lot of like good. I think there was a lot of good movies. There wasn't a lot of great movies. I felt like I had a nice solid like 5 to 8 movies from last year. Like, probably 8 that I would buy, that I was really excited about. And I'm like, I'm going to buy these movies. And I think I have purchased a couple of them or got them as gifts. Whereas this year, I don't know, 4, maybe 4 or 5 that I would buy. I don't know.
Yeah, my top 10's a little weird in the sense that like I had when you asked me like if I wanted to collaborate on this, like I was like, okay, perfect. I had been wanting to do something like this. One, because you and I are very much cut from the same cloth in the sense that if you're going to do a best of the year as far as movies go, try to see most things if you can, especially the heavy hitters, and try to reach into those crevices for good indies, documentaries, animated stuff. There's
foreign
a bunch of foreign films. Thank you. Lots of stuff across the board that is worth checking out that you might not even expect to make your top 10. And there was a lot of stuff in the world of foreign and documentary that made my top 10, which we'll get into a little bit later in the episode. But yeah, so I very much am a believer of that. So the fact that we kind of share that ideal made me really want to do this, in the sense that like this is a good format for us to work in.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think you and I talked about it a while ago, but it bugs me. I get with critics, like who it's their job. They obviously are going to put their best of the year lists out, in December, January right away, because they go to all the festivals, they get screeners, they have all the possible methods.
There's a privilege that comes with having those sort of connections.
Yeah. Those guys are watching 300, 400 movies or more, new movies, 300 new movies. I mean,
where you're a high school teacher and I'm a tech writer. We don't have such luxuries.
Well, and so that's why I always like to tell people. I mean, I've been doing this, I think, for 6 years now, or 5 years, where I've been putting out a list on social media and trying to discuss my favorite movies. I tell people I don't see everything. I just try to see as much as I can. I typically don't put a list out until I've hit my sweet spot, is usually hitting around 100. I try to get as close to 100 because I feel like if I have sought out all the Oscar Best Picture winners or a lot of the films nominated for Oscars. If I, go through all the films that I wanted to see, the movies that I, saw advertisements for, or then I go through other people's lists. I go to some of the critics' lists. I go to, people I trust on Letterboxd and YouTube and say, hey, what are other people talking about and watching, and try to, exhaust, a list as much as possible before I, put a stamp on it and say, yeah, this is my list. It bugs me, and I'm not going to name anyone or call anyone out, but it does bug me. I do see people who will put out like a list of their 10 favorite movies and they watched like 20 movies.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, you might as well just make it like, just say like, here are all like every movie that I watched this year, and just call it that.
And just rank it.
Kind of feels, exactly. Just rank it. It doesn't even feel like you're really like objectively trying to assess the year as a whole, Yeah.
Well, and even I will admit, I ended up, by the time we kind of decided that we were going to record this, there was a couple movies I left on the cutting room floor, I guess you would say. I get to a point where I get to my list, I make a note on my phone. I literally alphabetize movies as I go through the year, like, ooh, I'm going to see this. And then as I see people recommend stuff, I add to it and I just check them off as I go. And I'll get to a point where I start watching movies and I'll get through a streak of movies where I'm like, these are all okay, but now I just feel like I'm wasting my time because none of these are going to be in my top list. They're cool. They're good indies or good foreign language films. And I felt like that with a few. I did find a few of my top 10 movies right at the end, and I'll mention that when we get to them. But there were a couple gems that snuck into my top 10 right at the actually my number one I just watched within the last month. So
no kidding.
That was great. Cool. Yeah, that was cool. I did not expect that to happen.
Nice.
But
if you want, I was going to say I have a short list here. If we want to do like housekeeping before we get into the nitty gritty of top 10 honorable mentions, bottom 10, I've got all that covered. If you want, I can just go through some movies that just a heads up, I did not see. Therefore, they're not on my list, though they might affect it at some point. I can only see so much. There's only a couple of these that I think could really could have affected my top 10, but I'll just list them off real quick in a big row. And then Vince, you can yell at me all you want. So I did not get around to seeing Pig, Eternals, Zack, I know. Zack Snyder's Justice League, The Last Duel, The Tragedy of Macbeth, Army of the Dead, The Eyes of Tammy Faye, Being the Ricardos, Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar, Mass, and Bergman Island. Those are the ones that I saw on Letterboxd that they were ranked highly amongst what people really liked as far as like best of the year contenders. There's some that I didn't see that maybe could have surprised, but it's very unlikely. But those are the ones I would have really liked to have seen, just didn't have the time. But yeah, I think the only ones that may have really shook it up are Pig and The Last Duel, maybe Tragedy as well. Just wanted to at least throw that out there.
So Tragedy, the Tragedy Macbeth, I actually counted on my 2022 list because its North American release was limited. Its wide release was on Apple TV in January. So I'm counting that one as a 2022. So that one won't be on this list for me. But you have a couple of you listed there that are going to be in this list for me that I really enjoyed. Unless you surprise me with something on your list, for the most part, the only crossover I had with you was Bergman Island. I also did not get a chance to watch Bergman Island. It's on my list.
Wow. So you saw everything else on that list that I mentioned?
The Tammy Faye one, the Being the Ricardos didn't look interesting to me. So I just didn't watch them.
I tried so hard. I watched the first 15 minutes of Being the Ricardos. I shut it off. I was like,
really?
I can't look at this movie and take it seriously.
Neither one of those looked like something I would enjoy. So I just chose not to watch them. I just chose not to watch them.
Honestly, like anything post a certain point, Aaron Sorkin script wise, I just can't take seriously.
Yeah.
Like even Trial of Chicago 7, I just thought was mid. I think it's just fine.
That was okay. I was in the same ballpark as you. I thought it was okay. I thought it was all right.
It's fine. I'll never watch it again.
I'll didn't hate myself watching it, but I'll never watch it again. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Being the Ricardos, I got like I said, 15 minutes in, I knew I was going to hate the shit out of it, and I just stopped. I can't do this.
The only other movies other than Bergman Island that I had on my list that I didn't get a chance to check out that I thought looked interesting or good that were, I will also, same as you, I will narrow my list down near this time of year by going through Letterboxd. I'll see my rule of thumb is if it has like a 3.7 or higher, I'll check it out. If it's below that, unless I hear
range.
some crazy controversy or buzz, like something like Mother from 2017 has like a 3.0, but like the buzz around that was crazy. So I loved that movie, but so unless it's something like that, I generally will cut it off. But I wanted to watch The Hand of God on Netflix, French animated film. Didn't get a chance to. Little Fish was on Hulu. 9 Days was a movie that got some buzz out of festivals. Didn't get a chance to check out. Roadrunner, which I believe you recommended to me. I really wanted to check it out on HBO
That
Max.
will pop up on my list a little later. So.
Yeah, didn't get to check it out. I said The Hand of God was an animated film. I misspoke. The Hand
That's
of God
right?
is an Italian. It's an Italian film. I don't think it's a doc, but it's an Italian film. Summit of the Gods is the French animated film on Netflix that I did not get a chance to check out. This Is Not a Burial, It's a Resurrection was one that got some buzz out of festivals. And then what's his name? What's the British action star?
Jason Statham?
Yes, Wrath of Man. I wanted to check that one out and I didn't. So I thought it looked like a fun movie, but I didn't get a chance to
I get that.
So.
Yeah. Statham in the right project is really fun. So
Crank is
totally
great, man. I love Crank.
Crank's great. Crank's fun.
Crank's hilarious. It's hilarious. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, all right, man. Let's a lot of good conversation here, but anyone listening probably like, dude, get on with the list here, guys. So we'll prolong it a little bit longer though, because we're gonna do a couple fun things here before we start our list and talk about our bottom 10 or bottom 5, just kind of our least favorite films of the year here really quick. Yep. You want to kick it off, Landon, with your least favorite movies you watched in 2020?
Nothing would make me happier than to get a shot at these. Okay. So in alphabetical order, these were my bottom 10 of the year. Not all these I don't know will be likely agreed upon, but we'll see how it goes. Okay. Bottom 10, Cinderella, Clifford the Big Red Dog, Dear Evan Hansen, Don't Look Up, Free Guy, He's All That, The Mitchells versus the Machine, Music, Profile, and Space Jam: A New Legacy. That last of which is my least favorite movie of the year.
Space Jam: A New Legacy is your least favorite movie of the year?
It's my least favorite movie of the year.
That's my least favorite movie of the year.
Let's go!
Spoiler alert. That's hilarious. So actually, most of the movies you just listed, I actually did not watch. So I'm glad I did not watch them because I trust you.
You have impeccable taste in.
I will say the only exception is I love The Mitchells versus the Machines. I know I read your review. Yep. I know you hate it, and fair enough.
That's the one.
I get it. Everyone has things they don't like. So I really enjoyed it, but to each his own, right?
No, that's fine. It's just one of those movies. Like I knew about its production history for a long time. Yeah. I knew it had a lot of trouble getting made. I knew it had it went very back and forth. It went through a bunch of different little tweaks and things. And I know the pandemic probably didn't help before it got shoved onto Netflix. And it's just one of those things, it just feels so dated. And I hated most of the characters except for Katie, the lead girl character. I hated most of the characters. I really wasn't a huge fan of the art style and the design.
Oh, really?
I
loved it.
Yeah, I like the energy.
It's the same thing as, or the same software program or whatever as Spider-Man and the Spider-Verse, right? Same studio and everything too.
I believe so. Yeah, that would make a lot of sense. And I also hate films that have that underlying commentary of these kids on their phones. And I'm just like, oh my God, I just hate movies that are obviously written by boomers and Gen Xers that just have this lazy, middle of the road, anti-phone commentary. I just think it's really lazy and annoying. And that movie just rubbed me the wrong way in a lot of ways. And it just not, if someone likes it, great. That's probably my number 10. If that was where I cut it off at. And
I didn't love it. If I do a top 50, it'd probably be in the 40s for me. It wasn't
that's fair. I get that.
My favorite of the year or anything, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Fair, I don't have a bottom 10 here because if I did a bottom 10, I don't hate the 9th and 10th from the bottom of my list. I just think they're okay. And actually I'm going to do 8 here. I pretty much dislike to hate all of these. And I'm going to go from least hate to most hate.
That's good.
Or least dislike to most dislike.
Okay, hit me.
So my number 8 is A Quiet Place Part 2.
Fair. Yep.
And spoiler alert, I couldn't stand the first one either. My number 7 is I like to put my mini series on Letterboxd as well. The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I only finished it on principle, like just to be a completionist. It was the worst. Oh man, it was. I couldn't stomach that one, but I did. Mortal Kombat. It's stupid, but I don't know. I'll never watch it again. The Little Things is the next one. God, Jared Leto. I don't know what that guy was doing in that one. Reminiscence. Hugh Jackman. Raya and the Last Dragon. I could not stand that movie. Willy's Wonderland. Nick Cage. I'm sorry, man. I love you, but good Lord. You were the only good thing about that movie. And my number one, Space Jam: A New Legacy. Fuck that movie.
Man with taste.
I could not stand that movie. One star.
I tolerated Raya and the Last Dragon. I think it's ridiculous it got a Best Animated Feature Oscar nomination, but even then, like, I don't know, like there wasn't much I could really think of that would like really take its place. But it's that's the only one that I enjoyed enough to be like, okay, I'll never watch this again, but I loved the animation and everything. But Aquafina is so annoying. Oh my gosh. Like, she's funny in The Right Thing, but good God.
Yeah, I think she's really good in The Farewell, and she's done some other good things, but that movie.
Same.
Wasn't a fan. Not a fan.
Yeah. Aside from that, Space Jam, I can't talk about how irritating. And it's not even like a case of like they killed my childhood. No, it's like, look, I watched the original Space Jam, and I
rewatched it before I watched the new one, and it's funny. It's stupid. It's not like a masterpiece or anything, but it's really funny. It's 80 minutes. It's super short. This new one was like 2 hours. The original one was 80 minutes. It has all these funny cameos, and it doesn't take itself too seriously, but it also has some really dark humor that, like, to me makes it stand out, is making it even funnier. Like, they put this in a kids movie, like Michael Jordan getting sucked down a golf hole, like and then the slavery joke with Bugs Bunny and the aliens. Like, there's a lot of really weird dark stuff in the original one.
It's one of those things, like, I don't want to like put the original Space Jam on too much of a pedestal, because really it's a commercial for a commercial. That's what it is. Like, it's basically based off of Michael Jordan doing ads with the Looney Tunes, like for Nike, I want to say.
Yeah, I don't even remember.
It was for a shoe company. I know that. I think it's Nike. I'm pretty sure.
Because Air Jordans are Adidas. Maybe I don't know.
A shoe company.
I don't want to elevate it. One of the two.
I don't want to elevate it as high art or say that it really meant something to me, but the first one got what it was doing right. It's kind of like looking back on like the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air or Clueless, where it's so dated that it's kind of timeless in a way, sort of thing, that I look back on it as a fun time capsule. Plus the soundtrack is great. The animation versus live action ratio is actually pretty well done for what it is. Like, it's not too far off from like what Who Framed Roger Rabbit was doing maybe 5 years prior. Like, I give that a lot of credit, and it is entertaining. Like, I've watched it. It's fun to watch with a group of friends too. That was I think that was the first movie we watched in our Netflix party group that we started when the pandemic hit. Yeah. And it's a fun group movie with a bunch of people. Fun movie that I look back on fondly enough, sort of thing. Yeah. But the sequel does not capture any of that at all. It just feels like a soulless, like, corporate sort of product. It's not it.
Makes me angry. And I was angry when I finished. I actually, if you're listening and you want to listen to me rant about it, I did do a podcast episode on that movie with a couple guys who run a basketball podcast, a couple buddies of mine. I ranted and raved about how terrible that movie was. So very nice. I don't remember episode 20 something that I talked about. You'll have to scroll back through if you want to listen to me yell about that movie. So moving on from terrible movies here, let's talk about the best picture films really quick. So sorry if you're anxiously anticipating us get to our list. We're just going to talk really quickly about ranking the best picture films. Thought that would be fun here. They did nominate 10 this year. The Oscars are so weird. They've had the 10 slots as a rule for a little while now, but there's been years recently where they don't nominate 10. I don't know why. I think last year they didn't nominate 10, which was stupid, but this year they did.
I think a lot of it has to do with the amount of like the percentage of the vote. It has to get so many. Yeah, it has to get so much love and individual attention, which is shocking because I did not have Nightmare Alley making it in the best picture race at all. I thought it was going to get completely looked over, but it ended up making it. If I had to like guess, that would have been the number 10 that just got in. If we're really considering not just the quality of films, but we're also considering like award season campaign. Yeah, I didn't have it like getting direct nominated for anything, especially with Guillermo not getting a director nod. I was thinking, okay,
which was a shame. I thought that was a shame. I thought his
it's
direction
definitely
was
one of
really
the
great.
better nominees for sure.
I would have thought, you don't think Drive My Car would have been one that's kind of snuck in there because while the Oscars recently awesomely, I love this, have been finally starting to nominate some foreign language films. And I was so excited. Literally, you can ask my wife, literally jumped off the couch when Parasite won in 2019. That was the last time I actually watched the Oscars because I was
and your wife, me and your wife have that in common. I did the same thing.
I jumped. She watched me. I said, you can ask her.
I got you. You and I have that in common.
She and I were on the couch and I jumped off and got so pumped because I'm a foreign language teacher. I'm always looking, I was excited when Roma was nominated, disappointed Roma didn't win. And I think that was 2018 that it didn't win.
Not only that, but lost to arguably the worst Best Picture winner of the 2010s.
Some people have argued even one of the worst ever, but that's a different story. But Drive My Car, we can talk about it. It's a good movie, but I appreciate its merits. I can see what it's going for. And I read your review. I think you and I shared similar sentiments on this film.
Yeah.
It just didn't connect with me. I was like waiting to have some like emotional connection with this movie or like an aha moment where I'm like, man, I get what they're doing. And I do get what they're doing, but it just didn't connect with me. Very well made movie. Yeah. But I don't think I would ever watch it again, especially with it being 3 hours. Dude, I rewatch the Lord of the Rings movies every year. That's the extended editions. I only watch the extended editions. That's almost 12 hours of my life every year. So I am not afraid to watch long movies over and over again. It's just, I got to have a connection with it. It's got to be some sort of connection. It wasn't there for me.
Yeah. To answer your question, I think Drive My Car was always going to get in there, to be honest with you. I think the Oscars kind of have an unsung rule saying, hey, we're pretty much going to put a foreign film in a Best Picture slot. And I think Drive My Car just had the best hype train coming out of everything.
And I think they should. I think they should continue to nominate foreign language films. I think it's BS that for a long time it wasn't a standard. I think that needs to continue to be a standard because I think people should be aware of how many great films are being made and put out there outside the United States. There's lots.
It's just one of those things like I like Drive My Car fine. Like you said, like it's very well made. I'll probably never watch it again, but I'm looking at it and like, is this really better than The Worst Person in the World? Is this really better than Titan? Like that? I don't know. It just doesn't feel like it's taking as many like calculated risks as those other films as far as like the narrative structure or just crazy balls to the wall stuff happening every 5 minutes. If you've seen Titan, you know what I'm talking about. But I think there's a lot that can be said for that. But I mean, I'm not mad that it's in there. Like I think it's a very well directed film and it's patient and like
great music. I love the music. I think the music's really, really good.
So I'm not mad that it's in there at all, but I agree. I have a lack of cohesion that seemed to resonate with a lot of other voters this year.
Yeah. Do you want to go ahead and kick it off and rank your Best Picture nominees?
Yes, I can. I'll start at 10 and go up.
I'll do the same.
Cool. Number 10, Don't Look Up, as you heard in my bottom 10 of the year. I wasn't a big fan. Number 9, Coda. Number 8, Belfast. Number 7, The Power of the Dog. Number 6, King Richard. Number 5, Drive My Car. Number 4, Nightmare Alley. Number 3, West Side Story. Number 2, Dune. And number 1, Licorice Pizza. Also, to clarify, the only one of these 10 that I really, really loved this year was Licorice Pizza, which we'll get into my actual list in a little bit. But those are how I would rank the actual Best Picture nominees.
Our bottom 3 are pretty close, but it kind of gets quite varied from there. So my number 10 is Belfast. My number 9 is Coda. My number 8 is Don't Look Up.
All right.
My number 7 is King Richard. Number 6, Drive My Car. Number 5, West Side Story. Number 4, Licorice Pizza. Number 3, Dune. Number 2, Nightmare Alley. And number 1, Power of the Dog.
Yeah, so sort of similar regions of how we appreciated certain films, just differing levels of investment. Minus Power of the Dog, which I'm just kind of split on. Like I completely
get. I know a lot of people didn't connect with that film, but I don't know. I'll talk about it later because that one's pretty high on my list. So we're going to go ahead and talk about our favorite movies of the year here. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about our 20 through 11. I think, Landon, you said you have them just alphabetized, your 20 through 11, unless you have them ranked. Do you have them ranked, right?
I have them in alphabetical.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no worries. So Landon's going to list his in alphabetical order, and then I will do mine. I have mine ranked 20 through 11, and then we'll get to our top 10. We'll go back and forth 10, 10, 9, 9, etc. And talk about those top 10 a little bit more. And then we'll wrap things up. So Landon, you want to start us off here with your 10 that just missed your list?
Yes. These are the 10 that, try as they might, did not make it into my top 10. These are good movies, though. I would watch these again at some point. Just want a little bit of distance from them, but nevertheless are recommendable. Those 10 are Bad Trip, the Eric Andre Jackass hidden camera-esque sort of film that's on Netflix. Dune, which we talked about in the Best Picture nominees. It is my second favorite of the Best Picture nominees. I liked it quite a bit. Think it's a technical marvel, looks amazing, but just kind of missed the cusp. Plus, it feels very much like a part one, which it is. So I think we'll get the complete package and picture when Dune 2, or Tune, as I've been calling it, will come out sometime next year or 2023, one of the two.
I think they said 2023, I think.
23 makes sense. So yeah, we'll see how part one compares to part two. Encanto, the latest Disney Animation Studios film, really loved the animation style. I think it looks great. I think it puts Raya and the Last Dragon to shame. If you want to talk about that comparison, I think it looks incredible, and the music's great. Co-written by Lin-Manuel Miranda. It's my favorite thing.
We don't talk about Bruno.
Oh yeah, you cannot escape that song.
It's everywhere.
Yeah, it's everywhere. And honestly, I love the way that film kind of takes an unconventional approach to the message and doesn't really end with some sort of like contrived conflict. It just sort of ends. I kind of appreciate that about it. The Guilty, which is a remake of I want to say Danish film about a 911 operator that has to help someone that is on the other side. Jake Gyllenhaal's great in it. Love his performance. House of Gucci. This was just on the cusp of making it into my top 20, but I think the performances are fun enough and kinetic. I think there's a lot going on, and I think it's a big deal for Ridley Scott to combine all of this into his most cohesive film since The Martian. So I give him credit for that. Lily Topples the World, which is a documentary I saw at South by Southwest virtually this year that I really thought was very charming, about this girl who started very young as a YouTuber making domino toppling videos that looked very visually pleasing. It looked really nice. Red Rocket, the latest from Sean Baker with Simon
Rex.
Simon Rex, thank you. Simon Rex is an out-of-work porn star that comes back home to wreak havoc on a 16-year-old girl who is working at the Tasty Cone down the street, as well as reconnect with his ex-wife. Really great work from Sean Baker. That was my 11. That almost made my top 10. Really, really love that movie. I just missed the cusp. Respect, the Aretha Franklin biopic that came out in, I believe, August of last year, that really surprised me. It reminded me a lot of, not coincidentally, like 2007's Dreamgirls, which I really loved a lot and kind of still come back to every few years. And I kind of put it in the same vein as that. It's just a really well done, solid biopic that connected with me. Shiva Baby is another one that was a very fun indie, very claustrophobic and intense, very short too, under 80 minutes. So if you need something to kill some time on like a Sunday afternoon, I would highly recommend that. It's very funny. And shockingly, Venom Let There Be Carnage, I thought was a lot of fun and was surprisingly competent, especially compared to the disastrous 2018 Venom, which I really, really did not like. I think the direction is a lot more sharp. I think it's very fun and the humor hits better this time. I think the relationship between Venom and Brock is a lot more defined and it deals with a lot of the heavier themes better this time. And yeah, it's watchable and popcorn entertainment that I can really get behind. So yeah, that is just outside of my top 10.
So there's only a couple movies there I hadn't seen. Those two documentaries, I guess I'll check those out. And I have not watched either of the Venom movies. So I did hear this sequel was a lot of fun. So maybe I'll have to check it out. Yeah,
it's better than I was expecting. It's one of those things, like my friend Common gives me a ton of shit because I gave it a 7 out of 10, which is the same score I gave Shrek, which is his favorite movie. So he constantly tells me that I'm an idiot for saying that Shrek is as good as Venom 2. It's like, okay, Shrek is closer to an 8 and Venom 2 is closer to a 6. So calm down. But he's still one of my best friends, of course.
That's funny.
But it's a funny running gag that he likes to perpetuate.
That's funny. I like that.
Yeah. So what is your honorable mention list looking like?
So here's my 20 through 11, the 10 movies that I really enjoyed, but couldn't find a way to sneak them into my top 10 because there was 10 I liked more. Mine are ordered 20 through 11. So I will go from 20 up to 11. My number 20 is Listening to Kenny G, which was a documentary that Landon recommended, and I had seen other people talking about it as well. But when you recommended it, that kind of cemented my plans to watch it, and I loved it. I really enjoyed it. It's a documentary that after watching it, I want to watch it again. There's very few most documentaries I feel like I end up watching it and being like, that was good. But there are a few every once in a while, like, man, I'd watch that again. And I really enjoyed listening to Kenny G. I liked that they presented people who don't like him, like the side of him that I feel like people don't see, that he has this popular side, but then this side of, the world of jazz who really can't stand him. And I like by the end of the documentary how they kind of paint him in this very interesting light, that he's a very dynamic individual. He's very polarizing, which I wasn't aware of.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it very rare for me to watch like a music documentary about someone that I'm like kind of loosely familiar with, that I learn a lot. And I don't want to talk too much onto it because you're going to see it a little later in the conversation on my list. So
HBO Max, if you haven't seen it, check it out on HBO Max. It's a good one, worth your time. My number 19 is Pig, which Landon did not check out. You got to check out Pig. Another
100% will.
Another indie from Nicolas Cage. That guy has just been knocking out indie films left and right. The Cage Man. This was a directorial debut. And I do not, off the top of my head, I cannot remember the name of the guy who wrote and directed it. But it is a stunning debut. Talk about great music. It is a very thoughtful and deliberately paced film. It's one that I feel like was marketed as John Wick, but with a pig and Nicolas Cage, but it's not. It's actually really emotionally effective and I'm trying to think how to word it.
Emotionally effective.
Emotionally affecting. Yeah. It's not one that I think you would expect. It kind of sneaks up on you. Really well shot. Great cinematography, and honestly, one of Cage's best performances. And in a recent AMA on Reddit, he did say this was his favorite, one of his very favorite movies he's ever done, which is pretty cool. So it's on Hulu. If you haven't seen Pig, got to check out that movie on Hulu. My number 18 is F9. Before Fast and Furious 9 came out. So I got to explain this. Before Fast and Furious 9, before Fast and Furious 9 came out, I had never seen a single one. Last year we were teaching online at the school I work at, and I was like, you know what? I got quite a bit of extra time in between dealing with kids and work. So I'm going to try and watch every single one. And I love them. I never thought I would. I like that they know what they are. I don't think they're like high art. They're not like masterpieces in that regard. I think they're masterpieces when it comes to what they're going for. And I think F9 is reaching the pinnacle of exactly what this franchise is. And it's like soap opera, action, blockbuster, bro, man-child movies. And I went and saw this movie on opening weekend. It was the first movie I had seen in a while when it came out in theaters. There was only like 10 other people in the theater, and I was sitting in the back, and I was dying laughing. And I don't think people were enjoying the movie the same way that I was enjoying this movie. Yeah. I love them. I think they're great. I've pretty much bought all of them on Blu-ray now. I look forward to rewatching them again. I get just a special enjoyment out of how stupid these movies are. They're just so much fun. Like, they know exactly what they are. Just bombastic, ridiculous, over the top action blockbusters. And they give you characters that you can just have fun with and kind of invest in. But the dialogue is like straight out of a soap opera. I love it. I think it's great.
I love it. Go ahead. To say I love that for you.
Yeah.
I also watched all 8 of them in quarantine before the new one came out. And I kind of have mixed feelings on them. It's funny. I got through the first 4 films and I was like, man, do I even want to keep going through these?
5 is actually really great.
5 was the one I enjoyed the most. And then
it's the stunts are impressive in 5.
The run of 6 through 9 was where it actually hit its stride and be like, okay, I kind of get why people like these movies.
Yeah.
I'll say that 9 is my least favorite of the good Fast and Furious movies, but I don't hate it. I think I gave it a 6 out of 10. It's not, I'll never watch most of them again. I think the only one that I came close to really liking was 7, the one that James Wan did.
That's great. It
was good.
I love them. I think they're just hilariously entertaining.
And that's awesome. I totally respect people that do like those movies. So props.
But I think there's some people that get a different enjoyment than I do. I was laughing. I think there's people turning around. I think people were pissed at me in the theater. I don't think they understood why I was there, what I was enjoying about it. But
Vince, this is about family, okay?
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Number 17 for me is The Green Knight. So kind of a very big jump here from a multi-million-dollar, $200 million action film to a little A24 epic medieval indie film. I love The Green Knight. I'm an English major, so I actually have read Sir Gawain and The Green Knight more than once. That is anonymous. There is no known author for the original poem. I think what's his first name? Lowry. David Lowry. Yes. Lowry, I think he excellently captured the strangeness and just how weird some of those legends, those Arthurian legends can be when you read them. They're just very bizarre. And a lot of stuff comes out of left field, even when you're reading them. And I think he captured that very well. Beautifully shot, great music. I love The Green Knight. I haven't had a chance to rewatch it, disappointingly enough. I saw it when it was released back in August. I need to rewatch it. I was hoping to rewatch it before we did this list, but just didn't find time. It may have gone up on a rewatch, maybe a little bit higher on my list, but it's been so long. On memory, this is just where it sticks currently in my list. So number 16, Zack Snyder's Justice League, another one that you said you did not see. I hated Justice League.
Still haven't seen it. I haven't seen either. I don't know if I'll watch either, but we'll see.
If I had not been with a big group of friends in 2017, I would have probably left. I was very close. Suicide Squad, the original one from 2018 or whenever.
The David Ayer one, yeah.
Yes, I almost walked out back-to-back years. I was so pissed. Almost walked out of both those movies. I love this. I mean, I know that some people don't like Zack Snyder and what he does, and I don't think, he is on the same level as some filmmakers working today, but I appreciate that Zack Snyder has his own style, his own vision. He knows what he wants visually from a film, and it doesn't gel with some people, but I enjoyed it. And there's a lot of changes, very obvious changes to this movie. The first one is that it's over 4 hours. They flesh out some of the characters better. They've removed all the stupid, obviously Marvel jokes that got pigeonholed into the last one. I like some of the visuals that they changed up. I love this. I thought it was great. It's another one that I've only had a chance to watch once, unfortunately, with it being 4 hours. I do want to watch it again. I really enjoyed it quite a bit. I could talk a little bit more about this for a while, but I don't want to get too caught up in it.
Now, quick question. Now, I have not seen either of these movies just because I heard like the terrible reception that the first one had. And it was a point where, okay, if I haven't seen the original, like, would it even make sense to watch Zack Snyder's version? Because it's so different, and I want to know what's different from the original, sort of like just to get a side-by-side perspective. So would you recommend watching both of these movies and comparing, or just watching the 4-hour cut?
I don't think I could recommend the 2017 one unless
not even by comparisons.
If you're curious, I think if you decide to watch the 2017 one, you will see the differences are so obvious. I mean, it really is apparent that it was not Zack Snyder's vision. And I think it was funny that was a meme for a long time. Release the Snyder cut, and people made fun of it. But I mean, it was amazing that actually happened, that they actually allowed him to do it. But it's also amazing that I thought that much better. I thought it was really, really great. I enjoy it a lot. And like I said, I will definitely be watching it again. I will never watch the 2017 one. I'm take it with a grain of salt too. I'm someone who actually enjoyed Batman versus Superman. I think it's got a lot of problems and it has a lot of things that should have been changed or fixed. But I am probably in the minority of people who actually did enjoy it. I'm not a Snyder fanboy who's going to say, "Oh, you didn't like Batman versus Superman, you didn't understand it." You know, one of those people. But I enjoy it. I enjoyed Batman versus Superman. I'm also a sucker for everything Batman. Batman's my favorite superhero. Everything Batman. So actually watching the 60s TV show with my son right now. So
oh, very nice. Okay, you're a good father for doing that.
Yeah. My number 15, and I forgot, Landon, before we started recording, to run this by you. I actually snuck 2 miniseries into my list. I do this from time to time. I don't have a lot of time to watch TV shows. I don't spend a lot of time investing in TV shows because I just want to watch movies instead. I tend to go to some of my favorite TV shows. But when I see a miniseries that I think is really, really great, like Chernobyl in 2019, I stuck that in my 2019 list. There was a mini series that I really enjoyed last year. I can't remember what it was that I snuck in my list. I snuck Squid Game in here.
Oh, very nice. Cool.
Now, here's the problem. Since I snuck into my list, apparently it's no longer going to be a miniseries. The other reason I sneak these into my list is because Letterboxd does not have TV shows, but they do have miniseries that they allow you to rank and rate and review. So I don't know if Squid Game will disappear now that Netflix has announced that there will be a season 2. So I don't know how that's going to work.
Which is something I know the director never originally planned on doing. But it immediately became the biggest show in Netflix history.
Biggest show ever, yeah.
Do a season 2.
Yeah, which going back to foreign language stuff, I love it. This is a Korean miniseries, kind of a survival drama. I love this miniseries. I watched this one with my wife, and she really enjoyed it as well. I would recommend it to anybody. Please, listener, whoever is listening, do not watch the dub. Do not watch the dub.
Yeah.
Please. I have seen clips of it. I am someone who believes in watching everything in their original language. Use subtitles. Dubs are awful. They take away from the original performance from the actor. Even if you don't know what they're saying, you lose their emotion in their voice and it sounds horrible.
Yeah. My only exception to that rule is some of the Studio Ghibli dubs.
Animation.
Yeah, they do really, really tremendous work. And like I purposely watch Spirited Away and it's dubbed because I just get so attached to the like intended emotions that I felt when I was a kid sort of thing. But in all other circumstances, I completely agree. I think most dubs are trash and you should, if you are able to do it, you should absolutely watch the original format for sure.
Yeah, for sure. My number 14 is a movie that I was very sad did not win an Oscar. It made Oscar history by being the first film to be nominated in 3 categories by the same film: documentary, animated, and international film. Flee. This was a co-production between Denmark, Sweden, France, Norway. It's an animated documentary, and this is done for a couple reasons. Essentially, the primary reason that this documentary is animated was it seems to me, I haven't really looked into the production, but it seems like they did film this and then they went back and animated it to kind of hide, the identity of some of the people involved so that their identity was protected. And it is about a gay man, and you don't know he's gay until later in the film, and that is very significant from where he's coming from. He was in Iraq, born and raised in Iraq in the 80s at the time when the Taliban were taking over, and he had to flee with his family. His father was captured and presumably killed. He does not know what happened to his dad, and his family had to flee to Russia. Thus the name of the movie, Flee. Flee, Flee, not the bug with an A. So the story that is detailed in the movie is incredible. It's sad, it's harrowing, it's exciting, it's scary, and it's emotionally it affected me emotionally quite a bit. I watched this one twice in a week. I watched it myself and then watched it with my wife. It's on Hulu, so I would definitely recommend checking it out. The animation is gorgeous. It is 2D animation, and I think it's well worth your time. Great music in that one too. My number 13 is West Side Story. I actually, during 2020, my wife and I sat down and did a binge marathon of a bunch of musicals because I had never seen many of what people consider to be classic musicals, including the original West Side Story. My wife and I watched that together for the first time. She had seen it many times. We watched it in 2020 and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the original quite a bit. I was surprised at how much I enjoyed that, actually. The remake by Steven Spielberg, I think he even improved upon it. And now he has come out and said that he did not remake the original film. He was just doing a new adaptation of the original stage musical. So some people incorrectly have called this like a remake. And I guess you could, because there's, when you make a film based on a musical, how many ways can you actually do it? But I would argue with Steven Spielberg's case, visually, he brings a lot to the table. And now it helps that he's making this movie, 60 years later. He's got a lot more to his advantage, but Steven Spielberg's visual style with this film, really, really great. Love the music. The performances are all pretty good. Think it's worth your time. If you haven't seen it, it's streaming on HBO Max and Disney Plus at the same time, which is an interesting combo, but apparently that's happening. My number 12, Licorice Pizza. Love Paul Thomas Anderson. Paul Thomas Anderson's one of my favorite working filmmakers. There Will Be Blood is one of my all-time favorite films. Punch Drunk Love is also one of my favorite movies. This guy has not made a movie, to my knowledge. I've seen, I believe, all of his films. Inherent Vice is the only one I have not watched. I started it and actually got distracted. I had something, which is easy to
do during Inherent Vice.
I know it meanders. I know it's a tough watch. I've heard from a lot of people, but I would like to finish at some point. I've enjoyed all of his movies. That one's the one I just have not had a chance to finish. But Licorice Pizza I thought was really great. Coming of age film. And I think you have. No, you had, was this in your list that you just mentioned, or your top 10?
So this was my favorite of the Best Picture nominees, and you'll see it on my list a little later.
Okay, so we'll talk about it a little bit later.
We'll talk about it in depth a little sooner.
My last one before Leigh and I get to our top 10 here is The Card Counter. With Oscar Isaac. This was another one that snuck in kind of late. I just watched it a few weeks ago. I really wanted to try to watch it twice. But my rental on Amazon ran out and I didn't want to pay to watch again because my wife, it already drives my wife crazy when I'm renting all the ones that aren't on our streaming services that I'm constantly renting during this time of the year to catch up with my list. Card Counter, written and directed by Paul Schrader, famously did Taxi Driver. And then he had a huge breakout with a renewed success with First Reformed from A24 a few years ago with Ethan Hawke. The Card Counter is kind of like First Reformed in that it's a very quiet movie in its genre. This is another genre film from him, a crime drama about a vet, I think an Iraqi war vet, if I remember. I believe that's where he was supposed to be stationed in the film, who has served his time in prison for some things. I won't spoil the movie, for some things that he did while he was in Iraq. And when he is released, and actually during his time in prison, he learns to count cards. And when he's released, that's what he does. He gambles and he counts cards. And what's cool is they kind of have early in the film, he explains how that if he never does like big stakes, he never goes for big money, that the casinos mostly leave him alone because he just basically goes for hundreds of dollars. He's never going for thousands. So it's a really cool concept. He ends up getting roped into something very interesting. I don't want to spoil anything. Willem Dafoe is in this movie as kind of an antagonist, and he's really great in it as well. It's a very low stakes, kind of simple crime film. That's what I appreciate about it. And I love Paul Schrader's directorial style. He has a very clean look to his films in terms of how they're shot and edited and presented. I like this one a lot. I think it's one that a lot of people probably went under the radar. The Card Counter, definitely worth checking out. So
yeah, it slipped under my radar. I remember when it originally came out that some people had like positive things to say about it, but then it just kind of fell by the wayside. And that's a bummer to hear, but because I like Paul Schrader and he's a really brilliant screenwriter. And it just fell under my radar, but I will definitely put it on my watch list when we're done with this conversation.
Yeah. I liked it a lot. I think it was one that more people should have checked out. And it's one that, because it's so low stakes and simple in its premise, and I don't want to spoil anything, but when you see it, I think if you watch it, you'll know what I mean, that it's not like some big elaborate epic crime film. It's a very simple, straightforward one. that also has Tiffany Haddish in it, and she's got a small, interesting role in the movie. But
interesting.
Yeah,
That's
it's
cool.
great
Casting.
It's great. I really like it. Yeah, definitely worth checking out.
So yeah, do you want to get into? I'm kind of surprised we don't have that much crossover. Like there have been, like I have a full like 10 list that I wrote like a pretty extensive thoughts on, and we have barely like scratched the surface of what. Like I think 3 films have even been mentioned in the conversation that are in my top 10. So I'm actually really excited. Really excited to get into this now. So, but yeah, do you want to go first? Would you like me to go first?
Sure. I mean, it's up to you, but I can kick it off. What we'll do here is we'll go back and forth. So I'll do my 10, Landon will do his 10, and we'll go like that. And these ones, we talked a little bit more than I thought we would with the 20 through 11, but when you get 2 guys like us together who love to talk about movies, it's inevitable. It's going to happen. So hopefully.
So you want to go, do you want to do 10, 10, 9, 9 back and forth that way?
Absolutely. If that's cool.
Perfect. With you. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's perfect. That's how I planned. So.
All right, so I'll go ahead and kick off my top 10 here. I'm going to start off with The Last Duel. Martin Scorsese, Ridley Scott. Jeez, 2 old white guys.
Ridley Scorsese.
2 old white guys. Ridley Scorsese. Ridley Scott came out when this movie was originally released and was very upset with us millennials because of the box office performance and I remember thinking it was really funny how he was blaming young people for this movie. And then I went and saw it, and then I was disappointed people didn't see it because this movie is great. So The Last Duel it's a long one. It's almost 3-hour runtime. It's an epic medieval film, and it's actually historical. It is based on a real last duel that took place in Paris. It was reportedly one of the last like government sanctioned duels at the time between two knights. And essentially one knight accused the other of raping his wife, and they have a duel over this. Now, what I think is really interesting is the movie plays out, and I don't want to spoil it, but I think I have to share this because if you maybe, I don't know. I'm trying to decide if I want to share this. So this movie has a presentation style or a format in terms of how it plays out that's similar to Rashomon. If you've ever seen
I have seen Rashomon. Yeah, I like it a lot.
Rashomon. I never know how to say it.
Rashomon. Yeah.
Rashomon. So Akira Kurosawa, one of his most famous films, and actually that movie has since that name has been used for a psychological term where multiple people who witness a crime or an event recall it differently. So they choose to play this out in a similar format with 3 different viewpoints. The knight who is accusing, the knight who supposedly committed the rape, and the woman who was raped. And I think it's incredibly effective. And the movie ends up being a commentary on essentially how women were treated. And I don't want to spoil too much more than that. I don't think I'm really spoiling the movie. If you read a premise of it, I'm sure online that most of that would have been included. But I just think the way it's played out in that method is very effective. I think this is one of Ben Affleck's best performances. I didn't know Ben Affleck was in this movie until I started watching it, and then I didn't recognize him at first. I'm like, holy shit, that's Ben Affleck. He does this really goofy accent, and I think he was nominated for a Razzie for this performance, and that is bullshit. The Razzies,
which is weird.
They're idiots.
You know what? It's funny. You know what's really funny? Have you seen that Family Guy cutaway gag where like Ben Affleck is sitting on his couch just reading? He's like, "Whoa, I got to be the king of England in 20 minutes," and then he's like, "Hello, got it," and then he just leaves.
I have seen that.
That's one of my favorite cutaway gags on Family Guy history, and I kind of got that vibe that I thought that's what it was going to be like. But that's good to know that it.
I liked his performance.
Just kind of got a bad rap, and it's weird. Yeah, it's kind of strange that
most of the people but most of the people who saw this movie, at least from reviews that I read, loved it. I mean, it did get a lot of rave reviews. It just bombed at the box office. I mean, it made $30 million against $100 million budget. I'm also a sucker for medieval, epic films. Kingdom of Heaven, the director's cut. Do not watch the theatrical cut. That is a eviscerated film. But Kingdom of Heaven, Ridley Scott's director's cut, is one of my favorite movies of all time. So take it with a grain of salt. These kind of movies are just some of my favorites. But in terms of the period piece aspect, the costumes, the production design, everything about this time period that's being portrayed, I think is done very, very well. I love the music. I do think the music feels a little ripped off from Kingdom of Heaven. There's a lot of themes that are played in this movie that sound similar, because I love the score of that movie. I've seen it so many times. I know it very well. And that was one of my complaints in my review, actually, is that I felt the score seemed to be emulating that film's score. But I still think it's great. I think it's worth your time if you're willing to sit through a 2.5 hour. I think it's just over 2.5 hour epic medieval action film period piece. I think it's great. I think it's one of Ridley Scott's best films he's made in a while. And I did not mention House of Gucci, but that was one that I didn't like it quite as much as you, but I still enjoyed it. So he put out 2, I think, really good movies this year. So definitely, if you haven't seen it, check it out. I think it just got put on HBO Max. So definitely,
nice. Okay, cool.
Check it out.
Yeah, it was one of those things, like there are just so many films this year that were in that 2.5 to 3 hour margin that
a lot.
I had to make some cuts. And I just had a feeling that like when like Oscar preparation I just knew that Last Duel was going to get shafted and I just wasn't able to make time for it. I will make time for it at some point. That and Pig are the 2 on my list of
now you gotta watch Card Counter. You gotta watch Card Counter.
And Card Counter. Those are the 3 that after hearing your like extensive thoughts make me really want to go back and kind of reevaluate my list a little bit. So, but nevertheless, I'm very psyched about my top 10 in general. Like I feel much better about this top 10 than last year's top 10. So that's something to say, I guess. But yeah, diving into my list a little bit. I'm also reading directly from a paragraph. So if you see my eyes going this way, please don't think I'm a weirdo. I'm literally reading. Viewer at home. So in my number 10 spot, we have a film I wasn't able to catch in theaters due to its pretty early release in the stratosphere of award season, but nevertheless, proved to pay off, as this film has easily one of my favorite character studies and performances by a leading actress this year. Not only that, but the film carries on the director's now 2-film run of analyzing the complexities of women in roles of political power, but does so in a way that enhances the experience with terrific production design, costume design, score, sound. Everything just comes together in such a great, powerful way. The film is a very strong period piece, technically accomplished to the best of its ability, and that film is Pablo Larraín's Spencer.
Oh, yeah. I did get a chance to watch that one and I did enjoy it. Not quite that much, but I did enjoy it.
That's fair. Yeah, I was just on the cusp of putting this in, but it's just one of those films that like Kristen Stewart is so great. And like, that's why I said actress, not, I didn't want to immediately say, oh yeah, he's talking about Spencer. But at the same time though, like just everything comes together in such a really great, powerful way. It's shot amazingly. Like I said, the score and everything surrounding like the production design and everything just really, really wowed me in a way that I wasn't expecting to be wowed by. So I just want to give credit where credit's due.
That was scored by Johnny Greenwood, right?
Yeah, honestly,
I think that was my favorite part. Is I love the score. It was beautifully
I think
shot.
He got nominated for the wrong score. If you ask me, he got nominated for The Power of the Dog. Honestly, I think his score in Spencer is even better and more memorable, and really adds a lot more depth to what's being accomplished by Larraín in this. So we're splitting hairs. Like they're both great scores, and Johnny
I love the score for The Power of the Dog.
Immensely talented composer. Yep. And I still think his Phantom Thread score should have got shafted hard the year it came out.
He makes so many great scores.
Amazing. But yeah, that number 10, Spencer.
Well, my number 9 is a movie that I believe was nominated for Best Picture for 2020, the 2020 awards season. Mm-hmm. But I was not able to see it. It was not actually officially released. There was nowhere I could find it. I think it had festival releases and limited releases, but nowhere theatrically near me. And then I was only able to see it because it was finally released on VOD like spring of 2021. So I have this movie on my 2021 list because if I had been able to watch it, it would have been high on my 2020 list. So sorry, people. This movie, even though it was nominated for Best Picture in 2020, it's going on my 2021 list. And that is Anthony Hopkins' Oscar-winning performance in The Father. Absolutely devastating film. I think when I was writing my review on Letterboxd that I was actually crying, like trying to write the review. The end of that movie really hit me hard. I had a great aunt who had dementia, who just passed away a couple years ago. So I have had a family experience, with that disease. And I know it's very hard for everyone who's involved. And I was just stunned at how they portrayed it, from our vantage point, from the viewer, to make us feel, what those people are feeling. I thought it was a really brilliant and unique way to put dementia on film, to put the viewer in the shoes of the person who had dementia. And it was just so affecting in that regard. Great directorial debut from the director. I believe she also, this is her stage play. I believe her name was Zeller. I can't remember what her first name was. Florian Zeller.
Yes, I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
And I believe this was a stage play that she did. And then she was commissioned or hired to do the adaptation to film. And for it to be a debut, stunning debut. I also thought Olivia Colman was really great in this film as well. Great score. This is a movie we were just talking about. Beautiful scores. I really liked the score for this film. I thought it was very tightly edited. The direction, while it was good, was very restrained. There was nothing fancy over the top about the direction. They just let the story and the characters, the performances kind of do their work. It was a really great drama. So if you didn't see The Father, definitely worth checking out. I don't know if it's streaming anywhere. I believe I ended up renting it on Amazon, if I remember correctly. But
yeah, I think you're right. I feel... Yeah, sorry, my friend is texting me right now.
Oh, you're good.
So full disclosure, like I kind of just went by Oscar Best Picture cycle. So Judas and the Black Messiah, Nomadland, and The Father, I know we're kind of in talks or contenders for your list a little bit. We're not on mine because I kept them separate. Judas could have made my honorable mentions if I had adopted that, but because I kept them separate, they didn't. But yeah, The Father does a lot very, very well. Anthony Hopkins and Olivia Colman give really, really strong performances, and the film looks really well done. And I think there's a great sense of presence, like you said, in that puts you very much in the moment of how that actually feels to be, and from the perspective of someone that has dementia.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I love it. It's one of those movies I'm conflicted on because it was such a tough watch, but I think I would watch it again just because it was so good. To show someone else.
Definitely. Totally agree.
What do you got for number 9?
All right, number 9. Coming in at number 9, we have the latest film from one of indie cinema's most beloved auteurs. Once again, bringing together an all-star cast from a stable of regulars. Not only do they come together, but they come together for a really noble, beautiful purpose: to celebrate the work of journalism in a series of vignettes that are as technically accomplished as they are entertaining to behold. It might not be the director's best film, but it's certainly up there and a lot better than many of this year's Best Picture nominees, if I can be completely honest. And
yes, 100%.
Worth not glancing over, and that is Wes Anderson's The French Dispatch.
Yes.
Awesome movie. Loved it.
How obnoxious is it that didn't get any Oscar love? It's such a great movie.
Yeah, I thought that was going to be a shoo-in for production design and score, honestly, as
costumes
far as nominations. Costumes too.
Like makeup,
don't understand how this completely went over the radar, especially when you consider how pretty much every one of Wes Anderson's films is consistently celebrated by celebrated and nominated by the same board. So I don't know how that was such a huge oversight, but I hope it's not glanced over in the grand scheme of things. That is my card counter. That is the film that I want people to make sure that they go see, because I think it's streaming on pretty much every platform. I think it's on HBO Max and Hulu and Disney Plus. So yeah, people don't have a reason not to see it. They really need to.
It's gonna come back up again a little bit later.
Yeah.
Spoiler
Awesome.
warning.
Okay, perfect. And what's your number 8?
My number 8 is a film that you had already mentioned, and it was higher on my list because I absolutely love this movie. This was a movie that I actually also rented, and to maximize my rental, watched it back-to-back nights. I watched it by myself and with my wife. She will tell you it wasn't her cup of tea, but she enjoyed it and she appreciated it. I absolutely love this movie, and it is Sean Baker's latest film, Red Rocket. Mentioned earlier how great Simon Rex in this. Simon Rex has done a lot of stupid projects, I think, and he would probably be the first one to tell you that.
Is this the only good movie Simon Rex has been in?
I think so. I mean, I went through, after I watched the movie, I went through his filmography and was trying to scroll through stuff he's done. I'm like, I think this is far and away his best performance. I think he should have been nominated. I think 100% this was deserving of an Oscar nomination. I mean, he is so great at at portraying this scumbag narcissist, like the pinnacle of narcissism. And there was a lot of controversy around this movie and Licorice Pizza in terms of their main character's age difference. Not a lot of controversy. It was mostly faux controversy on Twitter. Landon and I are in, film Twitter and letterbox spheres. So I saw some of it there. I think this movie does a great job at condemning what is happening. This guy is being portrayed as a scumbag, as a groomer. He's trying to groom this young lady, this underage woman who I think she turns 17 during the film, which apparently is the legal age in Texas. And he is trying to groom her to become like the next big porn star. And he is called a suitcase pimp in the film, which apparently that's a real term in the pornography industry. It's a derogatory term because Sean Baker does a lot of research in the sex industry. One of his other films, Tangerine, which I had never seen before until I watched this one. I watched it after watching this. And
Tangerine rocks.
Even in the Florida Project, there's some aspects of it, but apparently he's done a lot of research in that area and likes to portray, some of those things that don't usually get to be seen on film. And apparently that's a real term, suitcase pimp, used to describe a male porn star who is leeching off of female porn stars and using them to get ahead in the industry. So that's why his character in the film, I won't spoil anything, but there's a moment he's called that and he's very upset because apparently it is a real derogatory term. And that's what he is. He is leeching off of women to try and get ahead in the industry. Beautifully shot film. This was shot on 16 millimeter film. And, it was apparent. I was reading about some of the work he did with his DP to capture colors in this movie. The colors pop. If you're a sucker for great cinematography and colors in your movies, like I am, you will be drooling over this one. All of his films are well shot. Florida Project looked really great as well, and so did Tangerine. Tangerine was shot on a cell phone very intentionally. But yeah, the color grading and the lighting are super great in this town. It takes place in a small industrial town in Texas, and the way he uses this town to frame for certain shots and have his character, especially Simon Rex's main character, navigate the city on a bike, creates a lot of really fascinating and gorgeous shots. Absolutely love this. Apparently the cinematographer worked on all of Trey Edward Schultz's films. So
that makes a lot of sense.
This was his first time working with Sean Baker, and Sean Baker's other two films look great, but man, this film looks really, really great. Very disappointed this did not really get any love at the Oscars. I also love the song Bye 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 by NSYNC. Took up a huge amount of their budget for this movie.
Wow.
So apparently the budget was 1.2 million, which is super low.
Yeah, very low.
But they only had a crew of 10 people.
Mm-hmm.
So it is, from articles I've read, apparently they had to use a lot of that money to buy the rights to Bye Bye Bye. And a crazy trivia fact about NSYNC is all 5 members have to sign off on a song of theirs being used in a film. So they didn't think they would get this song for the movie. And Sean Baker had like contingencies, like some other ideas set up in case they didn't, but they did, which is really cool. I love that NSYNC signed off on this movie for the song. And I think the song is very intentionally used. It's a breakup song. And it has some significance in the film. And, I don't want to spoil too much, but the character of Mikey Saber, one of the most despicable characters in cinema in 2021, definitely worth your time checking out Red Rocket if you haven't seen it. I loved it. One of the funniest uses of male nudity that I think I've seen in a movie in a while.
Agreed.
I won't spoil what happens, but there's a scene that I was almost in tears with some male nudity, and pretty great. Love it.
Really love it. Sean Baker is just fucking cleaning up. He is really, really great at what he does as a director. Just like these like really cool, intricate character studies from like these just seedy underbellies that people like to kind of gloss over, but really, really awesome movie that just missed the cusp of my top 10. It might even make it in my top 10 on a rewatch someday. Because I actually bumped because we rewatched the Florida Project for a Films for the Void episode not too long ago, and I ended up bumping my score up because the ending of that film is the big reason I wasn't completely sold on it, but the ending became less of an issue in comparison to the greater accomplishments that film sets out and succeeds at. So that's kind of where I'm at with Sean Baker. Always going to look forward to what he has coming down the pipeline.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So at number 8, we have the first of what are a few documentaries in my top 10 this year. The first is about an entertainment figure that unfortunately we lost too soon. We talked about this film a little bit earlier. It's from a director whose work I've really loved through past documentaries on entertainment figures like 20 Feet from Stardom, and especially 2018's Won't You Be My Neighbor, on a documentary about Mr. Rogers. And he does it again with this film. It is an in-depth personal film that somehow still feels very much in his voice and representative of the work he left behind. And that is Morgan Neville's Roadrunner, a film about Anthony Bourdain, which you can stream on HBO Max.
Yeah, it's one again that I just have not had a chance to check out, but I know that you had told me to watch it, so I got to take some time at some point to watch that one, especially because after you recommended listening to Kenny G, I loved listening to Kenny G. That was great. So
oh, for sure. Yeah, it's very much in that same vein. And there's a lot that works about this film, and like I said, it feels very representative of what Anthony Bourdain left behind, minus like a couple little things that I think this film caught some kind of unnecessary flack for that didn't really bother me that much. But there's a lot about this film that I really, really liked that I can't deny its emotional impact on me. So yeah, would highly recommend it.
My number 7 is a film that Landon already talked about, and it's one that I had mentioned when he talked about. I agreed. Very disappointing that it did not receive any love in the Oscars, and that is Wes Anderson's latest film, The French Dispatch. His first attempt, I believe, at an anthology film. I don't believe he has done I have not exhausted his filmography. There's a few of his older films I haven't had a chance to see yet, but to my knowledge, I don't believe he's ever done an anthology film before. And anthology films can tend to be gimmicky, in my opinion, depending on how it's done. This one has a very intentional reasoning, basically portraying the French Dispatch in the film as a newspaper. It's in France, but not in Paris. I can't remember the name of the city, right? It's not
Liberty
Paris.
City, Kansas, right?
No. Well, are they? They're not in Paris or in France? I thought they were in France.
I think they're in Kansas.
Isn't? I thought the guy was originally from Kansas. I thought it was like, really? Now I'm confused. Now I'm all confused. I thought they were in France.
Oh my God. Are
you sure? This. I swear that they were in France.
They could be in France. I really don't know. I don't think it matters. The film rocks.
Okay. I think, didn't he originally? I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking of something. Okay, whatever. But anyway, it's a great film. Everyone should check it out. Like we mentioned already, it's one that should have been nominated for several Oscars. It has Wes Anderson's style. If you're at this point accustomed to what Wes Anderson does visually, and you enjoy it, I love how detail oriented he is with everything that he frames in a camera. I mean, there's so much detail, especially with his props. If you look at any one of the sets that he is filming on, in any of his locations, there's so much detail in the background. It's clear that he loves this medium of cinema and doing as much as he can with it. I think his style is great. I never get bored of this guy's style, because even though, and this is something that kind of bugged me, and I wrote about this in my review on Letterboxd, it bugs me that people try to use his style as a source of criticism for his movies, because even though he uses the same style over and over again, within this style, he finds ways to be unique or do different things. It's not like he's copy and paste, what he's doing in each film. He uses that style to his advantage, to make his films more visually interesting. And I love it. I think it's great. There's a very small group of directors working right now who, like, if you see their movie, you go, oh, that's a Quentin Tarantino film. Oh, that's a Wes Anderson film. Oh, that's a Christopher Nolan. There's not very many directors who you see the movie and you go, if I didn't tell you who directed it, you'd be like, oh, I know who directed that movie. And he's one of them. And I think that's great. I think it's sad when directors don't have a voice, don't have that visual voice. You're like, I don't know who directed this. Could be anybody. So I think people miss that. And I think it's too bad that people want to use that as a criticism, because I think it just shows how much care and time and effort that he puts into his movies, his scripts, the work on set, post-production. Love this guy. I will see every movie that he makes. I think Wes Anderson is an incredible filmmaker.
Yeah, Wes Anderson forever, forever and ever, amen. I actually watched all of his films prior to French Dispatch coming out.
Oh, I need to do that.
It was a really, really satisfying deep dive last year to be able to do that. I didn't watch every single film. I think there were two that I've watched some of these films, but I revisited all these for the first time last year. And yeah, so much about his arts, like just his style in general, just speaks volumes about how meticulous and well thought out his films are, that I like genuinely really, really appreciate the work he does. So yeah, please don't sleep on the French Dispatch. It's really terrific. And yeah, it could even go higher on my next watch, like I said, with some of these other films.
Yeah, so great. So great.
Yeah. So now we're at my number 7. We have the latest film from a director whose work I've really loved in recent years. These are not recent films, but they're new to me. Films like Tie Me Up, Tie Me Down, All About My Mother, and especially 2019's Pain and Glory, which was on my top 10 of that year. You already know where I'm going with this. It's a film that emphasizes the director's really strong sense of slow, satisfying reveals, great performances throughout, including an Oscar-nominated performance from Penelope Cruz, and tangible tension at every corner. It is a very honest film about the difficulties of losing those you love in unconventional ways, and that film is Pedro Almodovar's Parallel Mothers.
So how the heck did you see this movie? Did you get like a screener, or did you see it?
No, so it had
Festival?
a very see, that's the thing. I saw this film at Studio C in Okemos. And yeah, so I was just looking around, like, because I go to mostly to Celebration Lansing, which is not too far from me because I've got that VIP pass thing that they have. And sometimes I check to see what Studio C has, because sometimes they get cool indies that aren't showing at the Celebration Lansing.
Yeah.
And Parallel Mothers just happened to be up there. And I was like, oh, great. I'll see this right now. I would love to see it. I love Pedro Almodovar. So I saw it. And then the second the film pops up, I see the Netflix logo, and I'm like, oh, this was going to be on Netflix? I didn't know that. And or like, I guess Netflix produced it, because I looked online when it was supposed to come out on Netflix and I never saw it on there, which made me think, did it just get released in specific markets or something? But yeah. Regardless, it's really awesome, and probably my favorite next to Pain and Glory, which I think is a real massive accomplishment of filmmaking. I really love Pain and Glory, but this is not that far off from that.
Yeah, so I just looked. It is now available to rent. The last time I had checked, it was not available anywhere. So they must have. It's not any streaming services, but it's currently on VOD. So you can. It's $5 on Amazon, $6 on Apple TV. So it's available to rent everywhere.
Maybe they were going to put it on Netflix. Maybe just Netflix just produced it. I didn't know if they were distributing it entirely and they were just going to put it on the streaming platform or what they were doing. But God, it just completely mismanaged. I just don't understand how some movies end up in certain places and others don't. But don't sleep on Parallel Mothers. If you can watch it, I would highly recommend it. It's awesome.
This one most likely will be on my 2022 list.
Perfect. There we go.
That's what's gonna happen.
I'll see you next year to talk about.
Yeah, it'll be like a couple of the movies that I've mentioned. It'll basically end up being on that next list.
Terrific. So what's your number 6?
My number 6 is a movie that I believe you said was in your honorable mention that just missed your list. It's a movie that comes from one of my favorite working directors currently. In my opinion, has not made a bad film yet, and I am just impressed with how he's gone from making some smaller films to these big, massive blockbusters. Blade Runner 2049 was one of my favorite films of 2017. Still absolutely love that movie. Dune, Denis Villeneuve's adaptation of the famous science fiction epic. I believe the book came out like the 1960s or something like that. I've never read the book. It's something that I've always been interested in reading, but I am terrible when it comes to reading because I just never have time. Pretty much the summer, if I'm on vacation, that's about the only time I make time for reading, unfortunately, especially now with 2 kids. Like you, I put this at 6, and I actually gave it a 5-star review. And in my review, I left a caveat. I said I loved everything about this, but I'm worried. I gave it a hesitant 5 because it's very clearly a part 1, obviously, and it feels that way. I mean, the way, without spoiling anything, the way it ends, it's definitely like, oh, it's done. So
it's abrupt.
It's very abrupt. What I saw, I loved. I loved everything that we got. Now, if part 2, doesn't do it for me. Maybe I reevaluate this after getting to watch them back to back, because I will definitely rewatch this before I go see the new one. And this is streaming on HBO Max now. I will definitely watch it again at some point. I've already seen it twice. I plan on watching it again. I actually watched it twice before I even wrote a review on Letterboxd, because I wanted to check it out more than once before I did. Really enjoyed it. I'm just so impressed with Denis Villeneuve's scale. I mean, I felt that way with Blade Runner 2049. The massive scale that he's able to present, the technical aspects in these movies, the crew that he works with, what they bring to the screen in these couple of blockbuster films that he's done is really magnificent. And even a movie like Arrival, which wasn't like a huge budget, felt like a massive blockbuster movie, because he just has such a way with his visual presentation. But he's also able to make these smaller, drama crime films like A Prisoners, Sicario. I wouldn't say Sicario's small, but something like Enemy, that's definitely a small kind of indie movie with Jake Gyllenhaal. But yeah, Denis Villeneuve, incredible director. I love Dune. I know some people didn't love it as much. Some people I even saw called it boring. I get it. I do. I get it. I feel like maybe if you didn't care for the characters or the story, I know that a lot of people who were into the book really enjoyed this adaptation of it. I have not seen David Lynch's adaptation to compare. I probably will try and watch it at some point, but I've heard,
how people love that movie.
I've heard bad things, but I'm still going to probably check it out at some point. But yeah, I absolutely love Dune. Looking forward to part 2. Hopefully this doesn't slip down my list on a rewatch if part 2 isn't good, but fingers crossed. I trust Denis Villeneuve. That guy knows what he's doing.
Totally. Yeah. The fact that it was greenlit so soon after the first one came out, because Dune is not an easy adaptation to pull off. And I really do think
massive book.
Villeneuve. I think Villeneuve really does pull it off to the best of what he does best as a director. So the fact that he's able to translate that is wildly impressive, even if there's some like basic sluggishness to the actual material itself that just kind of comes with the territory that
the exposition. I mean, when you have so much lore, I mean, that was like what Peter Jackson's problem with Lord of the Rings, when you have an author who has so much going on. I mean, it's just such a challenging,
drowning in subtext.
Yeah, exactly.
But same. Agreed with a lot of what you said for sure. Now at my number 6, we've got yet another great international feature, though not my favorite of the year. We'll get to that soon enough. This film came as Norway's international submission for the Oscars this year, and it ended up getting nominated for both international feature and original screenplay, and is a really terrific character study of a woman trying to navigate the frustration of her late 20s. Renate Reinsve, I believe I'm pronouncing that right, gives a really excellent performance, all to the tune of a terrifically structured script that has stuck with me a lot more than I was expecting it would. And that film is Joachim Trier's The Worst Person in the World.
Another one that I have on my 2022 list because I could not. How'd you watch? Did you manage to sneak this one at Studio C?
No, I actually found a screener that popped up online, and I think it came to NCG well after. I was just getting really impatient, like trying to find, okay, when or if I'm going to even watch this movie. And I knew I was going to love it. So I just found it online and watched it. And I think I ended up buying a ticket to a screening later and just not going, just be like, okay, it made up for it. But really awesome movie that I would highly recommend. If I would definitely make sure that it hits your 2022 list, because it's on my list. The Worst Person in the World and Parallel Mothers are both already on my 2022 notes on my phone. So both those movies, I'm sure with the buzz they got, I usually know what kind of movies I will enjoy. So I'm sure those ones will be high on my list. Definitely.
My number 5 is another miniseries. This is the second and final miniseries on my list. It comes from a writer and director who I think is one of the most underrated filmmakers in horror. I don't think this guy gets appreciated the way that he should. And his latest miniseries is one of several that he's been putting on Netflix, and I think they have all been really, really great. And that is Mike Flanagan's latest miniseries, Midnight Mass, which I was absolutely blown away by. I watched it once, and then I started a second time and then got distracted. I had something else going on. I plan on coming back to it and watching this again. But this follows up his Haunting of Hill House and Haunting of Bly Manor miniseries that he did, which were also recommendations from me in the years that they came out. It's only 7 episodes. And one of my biggest takeaways is the commentary on religion in this miniseries is incredibly profound. Mike Flanagan apparently was raised Catholic and became an atheist later in life. I am a Catholic, but I am someone who, once I still have my beliefs, but I've kind of resisted the notion of organized religion. And I think this movie would make people terrified of organized religion, but at the same time, and this is what's so profound about it, at the same time, there is some incredibly thoughtful and very beautiful dialogue in this movie about religion that I think is so powerful, especially when you consider that this is coming from a guy who renounced his faith, went from Catholicism to becoming an atheist. And yet in this miniseries, it's like he has some loving tributes to what Christianity can be to people, what it can mean to people. And the horrors of it. This is a supernatural horror. I won't spoil why it's supernatural. I think going in and knowing as little as possible will take you down a what the fuck ride when you're watching this, because this has some things hidden up its sleeve that if you don't know what's going on, your jaw might drop in a few places. I remember mine did, because I really didn't know much about it other than I love Mike Flanagan, so I'm going to watch this. And I gotta talk about this guy really quick. Hamish Linklater plays the priest in this miniseries. Wow, what a performance. Dude, this guy gives a couple monologues in a few episodes that are like, I was just transfixed. Like, this guy is incredible. He particularly some sermons. He does some sermons as the priest that, like, right now I'm just getting goosebumps thinking about the sermons he does. They're so good. It's like some of the best dialogue and performance going hand in hand that you'll see from 2021. And obviously it's a mini series, not a film, but I just think Mike Flanagan is rocking it when it comes to original horror from his films and his miniseries that he does. I think he's incredibly underrated. I think if you love horror and you did not see Midnight Mass on Netflix, you got to check it out. I absolutely loved this. I was blown away by it. Yeah, check it out. I don't want to spoil too much. I think you should try and go in and know it as little as possible if you haven't seen it.
Sweet. I will throw that on my list as well. Not a huge miniseries guy in the sense that I don't watch every miniseries that comes across sort of thing. Like, I'm very particular. Like, it has to have like a metric ton of hype, like Squid Game, for me to even check it out, I did like Squid Game quite a bit. Yeah. But based on that resounding recommendation, though, I'll have to check that out.
Loved it.
Cool. Now, coming in at my number 5, we have a profile piece on one of pop music's biggest stars and the interesting dynamic with her brother that's made them a force to be reckoned with in the world of modern entertainment. Together, the two made one of 2019's biggest records, shattered tour records, landed multiple number ones on the Billboard 200 with numerous singles, and all before the titular star has even hit drinking age here in the States. The documentary is a great character study on the pressures of fame, but never feels like it dwells on its own issues too much, which is what the best music documentary should do, connecting you right with that sort of like lifting that veil, but not too much sort of thing. And which I think the best music documentary should do. And that is Billie Eilish, The World's a Little Blurry, directed by RJ Cutler, which is streamable on Apple TV+.
So great. That was another one that I caught a little bit later. I just saw it like within the last few weeks. It is on my list, but just not my top 20. I do have it when I will inevitably on social media put out, some of my other stragglers. That is on there. I really, really liked that documentary. I thought it was great.
Yeah, it rocks. And like it's crazy too, because I already had a really high opinion of Billie Eilish's music. When We Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go? That album that came out that I mentioned.
It's
it was
so
one of my favorite pop records of that year. Yeah. Really incredible stuff. And one of those rare, like really just interesting breaths of fresh air in the world of like mainstream pop music, like just completely wiped the slate clean and like brings out a completely different dynamic as far as songwriting goes, as far as style and how we can mesh these like darker elements into pop music. And like, I don't know, I think that documentary really taps in to that sense of like not understanding what it's like to go from a successful pop artist to the biggest pop artist in the world sort of thing, or one of them, I would say. Yeah. And yeah, it just does a great job at capturing that feeling. And
how about that her and her brother made the album in their bedroom?
Yeah, and it won
his
5 Grammys.
Yeah, incredible.
Wildly
bedroom
impressive.
studio.
Yeah, really cool. And like that and like as someone that really liked that record too, it was cool to see those sort of like where like the first track on the album is her literally taking her Invisalign out and saying, and this is the album. And that made the cut. It just really adds to the authenticity to be able to look past the curtain and see how this process works. So if you like Billie Eilish or find her an interesting figure in pop, I would highly recommend it. It's really, really good.
Absolutely. I would second that. I enjoyed it quite a bit.
All right, we're at number 4, I think.
We're getting down to the last few here. I know we've been going for a while. I feel like we could talk about movies all night. My number 4 was a surprise project when it came out, when it dropped on Netflix. Actually, I think the creator announced it, I believe, only like a week or two before it dropped on Netflix. And this is a guy who kind of disappeared for a little while and has not done much. And he has since come out, and actually in this special, he kind of talked about his mental health issues and problems with anxiety and panic attacks. And that is Bo Burnham. Inside is my number 4. I love this. I think it is the project I have watched the most of anything on this list. It helps that the project, the running time for this special is 87 minutes. I've probably watched it 4 times at least.
Yeah.
I plan on watching it again. I will watch this thing again. Actually, when I was going through this list, I'm like, man, I got to watch Inside. I love it so much. It's a very bizarre, Landon and I talked about this before we started recording. You can't really define this thing. On Wikipedia, it's defined as a special. Letterboxd calls it a comedy. I don't, it's funny, but it's also like really sad and incredibly moving. It's basically like performance art and a documentary kind of combined into a comedy special. It's like 3 or 4 things combined into one. And essentially Bo Burnham just had the opportunity to make another special for Netflix. COVID hit and he couldn't do it anywhere. So he did it in the guest room on his property at his house in California. He wrote this, directed it, filmed it, edited it, stars in it. Pretty much it's a one-man show. He does the whole thing himself. And what's really cool is it's super raw. It filters in moments where it shows him working on this project and adds some weird layers to it. It has a lot of commentary on the experience during COVID. And what's fascinating is he never says COVID. He never says coronavirus. He never says pandemic. He never says lockdown. He doesn't even use any of those words, which makes it so cool that he's able to show us as a viewer his experience, but also make it so relatable. This is a celebrity. I mean, this guy's a celebrity, but I felt like when I was watching, I'm like, damn, there's like so much going on here that I'm feeling every moment of this, like in my bones. And it also helps that I turn 30 later this year. So there's a bit in here. He turned 30 during the pandemic while he was making this, and he records on screen the moment at midnight and makes it into a song. And man, that hit me hard. That one hit me because I'm like, shit, that's me. I'll be turning 30 here soon. But yeah, I know you enjoyed this one too. I'm assuming it's about to show up on your list here because you haven't mentioned it yet, but you said it was going to be on your list.
Yeah, if you wait very patiently, we'll be talking about it very soon. So I'm just going to go right into my number 4 and I'll get into it in a little bit. But at number 4, we're going from one music documentary to another. We've got a character study on one of music's most notorious figures with a reputation that precedes itself. Some know this musician as one of the 90s most notable musicians, while others refer to him as the death of the genre. Whether you love him or hate him, though, this documentary will undoubtedly change your perspective on what you thought you knew about him, and also tackles the idea of music criticism and how we perceive and value the art of others. And that film, Vince, you talked about it earlier, is Listening to Kenny G, directed by Penny Lane, which you can stream on HBO Max. I absolutely love this movie and is honestly one of my favorite music documentaries. I can't recommend it enough. It's just fascinating.
It's so good and it's disappointing. What was the documentary that won Summer of Soul from Questlove? Right.
Yeah. Which
I enjoyed that. It was
It's
good.
good enough. Yeah, I
enjoyed it.
enough. Yeah.
I was just disappointed that this didn't get a nomination. I think it's one of those ones that went under the radar, and I had only heard about it from a few places. If anyone listening is into the YouTuber YMS, he gave a rave review.
Yeah, that's how I found out about it.
Was it okay
through his review? I love
Yeah.
YMS too. So
yeah, I heard his rave review of this documentary. I'm like, I guess I'll check it out. And then I kind of forgot about it. And then you recommended it. I'm like, okay, definitely got to check it out. And I saw it was HBO Max. And yeah, it's one that I think more people should check out. And like you mentioned, the commentary on criticism, music criticism, I think is really fascinating. It's something that I think is really what locked me in, that there's this thread of these two types of people surrounding this figure, these people who love him and these people who hate him. And the fact that they go back and they ask him these questions to his face. And he's like, do you have thoughts on X, Y, or Z in terms of people hating you, loving you? And I think it just makes it so interesting. I just remember smiling while I was watching. I'm like, man, this is so interesting.
Yeah, if I may, I actually pulled up a quote that I literally paused the movie while I was watching it and think, God, that is so true. I wrote it down in my review as like a quote that I wanted, that just knocked me on my ass. And if you like this quote and like what resonates out of it, then you will like this movie. Here's what the quote is from the documentary. When you love a piece of music, you're basically exposing something about you. I like this, don't you? No, I hate that. They're basically saying to you, they hate something about you. It's good, it's no good. It's good, it's no good. You're basically saying you're good, you're no good. You're good, you're no good. And then people fight for their own self-worth. If that resonates with you like it did for me, then this movie's going to knock you on your ass, because it really surprised me how much that resonated with me. As someone that, it kind of reminds me of the critic's speech in Ratatouille that everyone like raves over.
I love that speech.
It's that same sort of sentiment in the sense that like, even though like criticism, I think criticism is incredibly valuable. Hell, like why else would I spend 2 hours talking with you on a Tuesday night about
movies.
What art means the most to me and everything. But at the same time though, like I feel like even though criticism is this like sort of subjective nature, I think it takes a lot for a person to put themselves out there and be representative of what they feel is important to them and have it succeed. So for that reason, I would really recommend listening to Kenny G. It's something that I don't know. It's just the music documentary that I got so much out of that I wasn't expecting to get much out of. I just can't recommend it enough. And I can't wait to see what Penny Lane does as far as other music documentaries. Cause this is from HBO Max's Music Box series. There's one about Juice WRLD as well that I'd really like to watch at some point, but yeah, I really love what this movie says. And yeah, I can't wait to watch it again. Hopefully it gets a physical release someday.
Yeah, I know that's the sad part about streaming is that half
Unfortunately.
the time, some of the stuff, who knows if it'll ever get a physical release.
Mm-hmm. Criterion, if you're listening to this, make that happen.
Yeah, come on, Criterion. You're our savior. You're our savior.
I can see the cover now.
Yeah. All right, going to move into my number 3 here. My number 3 is one that we actually mentioned a little bit earlier. It was a Best Picture nominee, one that surprised Landon. It was a movie that I caught in theaters. Fortunately, at the end of the year last year, once I was on winter break, I was able to go see this one, and then I did get to rewatch it on HBO Max. I actually showed it to my wife, and she really enjoyed it. And it's Guillermo del Toro's latest outing, Nightmare Alley. One of the reasons I love this movie so much is it explores a genre of film that we don't really see anymore, and that is a true noir film. A lot of sites online list this as a neo-noir, and a lot of the definition of a noir film is very ambiguous. It's kind of really hard to lock down. It's more of a feel and an era of filmmaking than a true genre. If you kind of read up on it. So a lot of people will call this a neo-noir just because it's a noir film that's made now. But for me, the definition of a neo-noir is something more like a Hell or High Water movie, where it's like capturing the essence of noir set in the modern times. You know, a No Country for Old Men is more of a neo-noir or a Western noir. Whereas Nightmare Alley, to me, really embodies everything about the 1930s and 40s and 50s when they had this noir, when noir was at its height. When it kind of explores, existentialism, and it does this, through really morally ambiguous characters. A lot of the times it has this mood that's very gray. There's lots of rain. Usually it has a character who's trying to find something about themselves. They're on a journey. Usually it's a male character, tends to be most of the time. A lot of times these movies have some sort of a detective element to it. The interesting part is this movie is based on a book, and it was actually adapted in 1947. There's a 1947 Nightmare Alley that I have not seen. Guillermo del Toro reportedly did not remake that film. He had seen the film and read the book and wanted to do a new adaptation of the book. So I mean, I don't really know anything about that movie. People say it's good apparently, but I would like to check it out at some point. But for what it's worth, I think this is a really great noir film. The cast is incredible. I think Guillermo del Toro, brings his style, but almost a restrained version of his style. This is not a super flashy outing from him. It's going back to long movies. This is another long movie that came out in 2021, but I think its pace and length feel intentional here, in terms of the context of how this main character, played by Bradley Cooper brilliantly, another person that I thought maybe should have gotten potentially a nomination for being a bad guy. Don't want to give too much away. Don't want to give too much away without spoiling anything, but he's not a very good person. And you kind of find out more about him as the movie goes on. I'm also a sucker for main characters who end up being villains, i.e. Breaking Bad, The Sopranos, things like that. I don't want to spoil the ending, but I also think this is probably one of my favorite endings in terms of satisfying endings in 2021.
Makes an impression.
I love the ending. The use of reincorporation is great in this movie, especially with that ending. It makes you pay attention, kind of piece some things together. And the ending, I just had a huge smile on my face. I'm like, yes, yes, what a perfect ending. The final shot of this movie is haunting final shot. Makes your spine crawl. Really, really great all-star cast. Great production design, great use of costumes, really capturing this time period and that genre, that era of noir cinema. Love Nightmare Alley. I honestly thought it was kind of underrated. I didn't think people liked it as much. I know, Landon, you said you didn't like it quite as much as some other movies that came out this year, but man,
sure.
I love this movie.
Sorry, my cat's making an appearance. This is
unbelievable.
Richard, if anyone's curious.
Hey, Richard.
Hey, Richard. Definitely like and appreciate it more than I really love it, but I totally understand the appeal. I agree it was very underseen. Disney is completely mismanaging 20th Century Fox.
Wasn't marketed well at all.
Cough, West Side Story, Cough, Nightmare Alley, Cough, The Last Duel all got way less love than I think they deserved at the box office in general, and just had terrible.
Disney's fault, 100% Disney's.
Oh, it's all Disney's fault, and their acquisition of Fox was just a complete shit show. So I can't blame anyone for not immediately seeing this. I didn't catch this in theaters, unfortunately. Again, another 2.5 hour film that you kind of have to pick and choose when you can see them. But very much appreciate the look of the film. It looks amazing. Like the production design is fantastic. Costume design feels very period appropriate. Performances are all great.
The use of lighting. There's some nighttime, some nighttime sequences that I felt, especially a couple with snow, where the lighting is really well done. Yeah. Very, very terrifically made film. It didn't connect with me on that emotional level that I think you experienced, but I do appreciate it, especially coming from Guillermo, a director I immensely respect. Yep. Cool. So coming in at number 3, we have what is undoubtedly the best piece of art to come out of the COVID pandemic. It is part comedy special, part musical variety hour, part existential nightmare, all under the guise of simply trying to keep yourself occupied during a life-changing global crisis. Every moment of this film is purposeful, subversive, considerate, and every bit as eye-opening as it is depressing at a base level. However, the best art, I think, finds a way to break through the difficult things in life that we have to overcome. Nihilism, self-loathing, a million different hindsights that rear their ugly head when we're in our darkest moments.
but find ways to counteract them. And that's exactly what this film does. And that film, of course, is Bo Burnham's Inside. Bo Burnham, a comedian I immensely respect. He is easily one of my 5 favorite stand-up comedians. I have not seen him live. Hopefully, with everything that's been changing, I hope that changes soon. I hope he's able to overcome what is difficult for him about performing and able to get past that or find a way to cope with it, because I'd love to see him live someday. And Inside completely shattered any already high expectations I had for the special. And I've seen it twice in its entirety, but I've listened to the album itself on loop. When I looked at my Spotify Wrapped last year, it was easily my number 1 most listened to album. It's just something I can endlessly put on in the background. And I just love something like this that can resonate with so many people, specifically people our age, for someone that is so resourceful and intelligent as Bo is, and he's able to convey these feelings that I think a lot of millennials are also feeling, especially in that late 20s, early 30s range. Again, that Vince, you and I fall smack dab in the middle of, is a very powerful thing. And I'm glad that it has connected and related with so many people. So I'm sure people watching this have already seen it, but Inside is pretty incredible.
If you haven't seen it, gotta check it out. And I would recommend, I just watched this 2 nights ago. His latest project, he directed a stand-up special from comedian Gerard Carmichael on it's
called Rothaniel,
yep, on HBO Max. Oh man.
Have not watched it yet. We'll watch I'll put it on the background while I'm working one day, but I'm excited to watch it.
Oh, you gotta watch it though. I think one of the things, like, you gotta watch it, because one of the things that I was most impressed about it was how many times do you see a stand-up special where the visuals come into play? And that is just a testament. Bo Burnham not only directed this special, he edited it.
Cool. Okay.
It's really well done in terms of how it's visually presented, which you don't usually see. That's usually not a factor with stand-up comedian specials. It's not really, you just, listening to the joke. You're right. You can usually play in the background, just listen, but I feel like it's worth sitting down and watching just to see what Bo did. The content, everything that Gerard does too. His material is so great. Really actually sad. There's some funny stuff, but I won't spoil anything. It's actually really sad and emotional. Some of the things he talks about, it's very conversational. And he actually interacts with the audience very, very effectively, which you don't usually see very often, but the visuals from Bo also add a whole nother element to it. So
nice.
Yeah, definitely. If you haven't seen that yet, it just came out on HBO Max. So anyone listening, Gerard Carmichael's latest special, Rothaniel, worth checking out. So
nice. I know what you mean, because I had a very similar reaction to the visual style of Patton Oswalt's Annihilation, which is on Netflix, that Bobcat Goldthwait actually directed. He was like a very loud, like screamy comedian in the 90s. If you've ever seen his work, he also was the voice of Pain in Hercules, if that gives you an idea. Yeah. So I totally agree. Like, I think there is a visual element that a lot of stand-up comedians neglect when making their actual specials. So the fact that is such an essential part of it, I'll make time and actually watch it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's worth your time.
So what are you at with number 2?
Number 2, we're wrapping up here. I know we've been going for like almost 2 hours, about 2 hours here. Number 2, we talk about movies forever. Number 2 is another Best Picture nominee, one of my favorite movies of the year. Obviously, I have it at number 2. It was a movie that I didn't have so high initially, but for some reason, I couldn't get it out of my head. Something about the ending stuck with me, and I went back and watched it again. And then I enjoyed it even more on rewatch. And then I actually ended up doing a podcast episode with one of my buddies on this movie, and he adores it as well. And after our conversation, I watched it a third time, and it's just a movie that I keep coming back to. I'm going to watch it again here soon, and that is Jane Campion's The Power of the Dog. There's something about this movie, the way she presents it, these characters and this story, and kind of the most significant thing to me are the character dynamics, kind of the way they interact with each other and their relationships, how they overlap, and kind of how the themes of this film are reinforced through the characters' relationships. A huge theme, obvious, and I want to be careful because there are some details about this movie that I feel like people are like, oh, that's not a spoiler, but I didn't know about it going in. And I was like being surprised. I thought made it even better. The one thing I will say is the aspect of toxic masculinity, especially in the setting of, a Western film taking place. I believe it's supposed to be like the 1920s, if I remember, 1910s, right. 1920s. Yeah. So it doesn't kind of hit that, cliche 1800s that's a lot of Westerns for a long time did, Man with No Name trilogy, Sergio Leone films like that. But kind of has a different time period, but that's because it's based on a book. It's based on a 1967 novel. So that's when the novel was set. But yeah, a lot of really interesting themes presented in this film. Great score by Johnny Greenwood. I love the score for this movie. It's incredibly well shot. Interestingly enough, they had to shoot this in New Zealand. It takes place in Montana, but they shot it in New Zealand. I've been to Montana. My wife and I drove through Montana, spent some time there. You can kind of tell if you've been to Montana, you're like, yeah, that's not the United States. But I don't think it really matters. And I think within the context of them trying to make this film where it's not really optimal for them to do what they're doing here in Montana. It's just, I feel like it was a smart choice. And I feel like it still doubles really well as that part of the United States. And I think, it's if the average person's probably not going to know the difference unless they looked it up. When
you wrote that, were you thinking, man, how do I say what Sam Elliott said and not sound like Sam Elliott?
No, I don't agree with what he said at all. I mean, I think he was way off base on what he said.
I agree. Same.
Like,
and I'm just
totally I know, but just it's that you bring it up. I got to mention it. Just totally gatekeeping the Western genre. Like, dude, none of us were alive during the time period that's being portrayed in these movies. Like, come on, man. Like, they're movies. They're movies. Like, they're not. It's not that serious. I mean, come on. But yeah, I really enjoyed this movie. I was really disappointed it didn't win Best Picture. I was kind of hoping that it would. I knew Nightmare Alley and Dune weren't going to win, so I was really hoping this film would win. Coda's not that great, let's be honest. So I was really hoping for this film. I was glad that Jane Campion won Best Director. Not a lot of women get Best Director noms or even let alone win. And now we've had
I think this is one of the first films in a long time to only win Best Director. It didn't win any other Oscars aside from that.
1968, The Graduate was the
That's
last.
what I thought. I thought The Graduate was the last one. Yeah,
it was the last one, 1968. Yes,
pretty wild.
Yep.
But
and it was also the first movie since The Color of Purple in 1985 to lose in 11 categories because it was nominated for 12.
Yeah. How crazy is it that, man, Netflix has just put their chips on the wrong squares. I feel like Roma
was snubbed. Roma should have won. I mean, Roma won a lot of awards though.
Yeah. Roma. Yeah. Well, I'm talking like just Oscars, like, cause Irishman didn't win anything. Roma won some of these movies should 3. Yeah. Roma won 3 Oscars, I want to say. And then, Power of the Dog just won Best Director. But yeah, how crazy is that? It makes me wonder if there's like a bias in the Academy against.
Oh, there absolutely is.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It has to be.
You know that they don't like that Netflix originated this streaming thing. They're the originators of streaming. And it's so ironic that Apple TV, who is late to the party, gets the first streaming service Best Picture.
Isn't that hilarious?
It's hilarious, but it's such bullshit because Coda's fine. It's okay, but
it's a Sundance Disney Channel original movie.
Yes,
that's what it with sex jokes. That's really all it is. Like, it's not the worst thing. It's not the worst thing in the world. I'm not saying it's awful. I just didn't like it. That's really all I can say about it. I just think it's very mid.
Very frustrating. I agree. I agree. Absolutely.
But Troy Kotsur is pretty great, though. I mean, he's the best part of the movie. So
yeah, I thought he was really great. So
yeah, but coming in at number 2 on my list, we have the latest film from my favorite director working today, coming back to reclaim his throne 5 years after his last film, which was also one of the best of that year. This film captures the spirit and energy of the 1970s by paying homage to some of its greatest works, all to the tune of 2 of the year's best performances from Alana Haim and Cooper Hoffman. The film looks terrific, has a lot of fun with its laid-back hangout structure, and isn't afraid to take its time and let the audience absorb the atmosphere that it sets up. It completely restored my faith that every director gets to make one cool, relaxed hangout movie in their career. And that film is Paul Thomas Anderson's Licorice Pizza. I absolutely adore this movie.
It's great. Yeah, it just missed. I think I had it at number 12. It just missed.
Yep. Yeah, I was gonna
12.
say it
Just
came up a
missed
little
my
earlier.
list.
Yeah.
I really enjoy it as well. Paul Thomas Anderson is great. Well, for sake of time here, let's get into our number ones, because I know we've been going for over 2 hours here. My number one, which I think I mentioned earlier, or I don't remember if we had started recording or not, was actually a movie I just watched on the last week of March. I snuck this in. It was on my list for a long time, and I got around to watching it late. And it's actually from a director who I do not believe I've seen any of his other films, Mike Mills, who wrote and directed Come On. With Joaquin Phoenix, and a incredible child performance. It's very rare that you get a really great child performance. A lot of times, if you have a lead or one of your main characters be a child, it can make or break a film. And I think it takes a special young person, but also the right director. Because I don't think there's any right formula to tapping into an actor who doesn't really have life experiences. But I also think smartly, you have a young actor here who is just trying to be a kid, trying to navigate, being a child and dealing with, some familial issues or, problems with parents that a lot of kids could probably relate to. I don't know if this actor has these issues in real life. Joaquin Phoenix is brilliant in this film, as well as the young kid's uncle. This movie, I don't think, I don't want to speak for other people, but it might not connect with other people like it did with me. I became a father in 2020, and then my son was born on March 20th, 2020. My daughter was born on the same day 1 year later. So they have the same birth. They are Irish twins. Yeah, 1 year apart. So being a new young father, something about this movie really connected with me. And then also being a teacher and kind of seeing some of the things that kids go through on a day-to-day basis, and some of the families, family issues that kids have to navigate and deal with. This just connected with me on a whole different level. It made me, tear up more than once. And it was a movie that just floored me in terms of a character, dialogue, and story standpoint. I really like the sentiment that this movie, the idea that it's getting across, that spending time with kids can be a profound life experience. I think that's one of the big takeaways for me from this movie, is that no matter how long of an interaction you have with kids, whether it's, a prolonged vacation like in this movie with an uncle and a nephew, or if it's just this character that Joaquin Phoenix portrays is a journalist, and throughout the film the movie's broken up with interviews that he does with actually real kids, real American kids that are not supposedly not really scripted, they're not actors. And I think it's a really beautiful sentiment to have that in the film. These real life experiences that kids, just in modern America are dealing with, but that they're also positive. The kids just exude positivity. They're so resilient. Kids are so great. They're so smart and confident and innocent. They have all these things that they're bundled together. They're also hard to deal with. They're tough. Kids are not easy. But at the end of the day, they just want to be loved. And I think that's one of the best things that I think you can take away from this movie. It's a very low stakes film. It's a very simple film. It's probably, in terms of like simplest dramas that I've ever had at number one for end of the year list, but it just connected with me on a different level. It's very well shot. It has black and white cinematography. I'm a sucker for really great black and white cinematography, and this movie is gorgeous. A lot of really intimate scenes, obviously, and some so hilarious interactions between Joaquin Phoenix and it's Woody Norman is the actor who plays the little kid. Their interactions are hilarious. And Gabby Hoffman, who plays his mother, she's also really good. And Scoot McNairy, who plays the father, has a few small scenes that are mostly non-verbal, almost more not very dialogue heavy, and he's really great too. So yeah, I absolutely loved Come On.
Yeah, just kind of knowing you as a person for the last year or so since you and I connected this. I don't know. I think it was just through Twitter mutuals.
Yeah.
When I watched this at the very end of last year, I was like, man, I just know this is going to hit Vince like a ton of bricks because this hits him just at this time of his life where, like you said, you become a new father. And like, I can see how those central themes would connect with you. They didn't connect with me to that level, but it is a very well-made film. Mike Mills is a director whose work I respect immensely. 20th Century Women.
I got to watch more. That's the movie that I've heard is really good. I got to check
that's the thing.
out.
I didn't watch it until this year after I watched Come On, Come On. I really wanted to check it out. And a film I like even more than Come On, Come On. I was really impressed with like the structure and how everything just kind of comes together. But yeah, it's really good. And definitely one that I would love to come back to at some point.
I was very sad that this didn't get any love at the Oscars, as I mentioned earlier.
I feel like A24 is just dropping the ball with like distribution. I don't know what this would have been nominated for. Like in my opinion, I think it could have been nominated a few spots over some other films, but in terms of Academy members voting, I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of them even saw it. Some of them, most of them probably even see this. Probably not, honestly.
Yeah.
Much like the film that I'm about to talk to you about right now for my number one. I don't know if you know what my number one of the year is yet, but we'll find out together if you do. Now we arrive at my number one film of 2021, the best film of the year that also doubles as the year's biggest risk, the most audacious film of the year, and by association, the most entertaining movie of the year, depending on what you classify as entertaining. It's an absolute roller coaster ride of a film that will undoubtedly make you cringe, throw up, or both. But through what it accomplishes, it's more than worth the experience. This film has everything: great performances, enormous personality, incredible cinematography, and legitimately surprising twists that'll leave you enormously satisfied. And that film is Julia Ducournau's Titan.
Oh, geez,
I
should have seen that coming.
Absolutely rocks. It was the winner of the Palme d'Or at Cannes this year.
Yep.
I can't believe it won the Palme d'Or at Cannes this year because this film is so wildly innovative and cool and fascinating to behold. Weird as hell.
So weird.
I was actually a little nervous that it would come up on your list at some point. Therefore, it would kind of ruin the surprise of me, but it kind of worked out that way. So.
It just missed my list. I really enjoyed it. It was a movie that I wanted to rewatch and see if I would enjoy it more on rewatch. I only got to watch it once, and I watched it a while ago. So I don't know if watching it again, it would hit me a little bit stronger on rewatch. But I really did enjoy it. I think I gave it a 4 out of 5 on Letterboxd.
Nice.
And I think it's like at the 20-something spot. It just missed.
Gotcha.
It was very close to being on my list here because I really enjoyed her film Raw that she did from a few years ago
Raw's
as well.
Really
That was a really weird, bizarre movie too. But this one's just batshit crazy, man. It
just knocked me. It just knocked me on my ass.
Fan of horror, you gotta watch it.
Any sort of body horror I get very into, and find just this film is just such a visceral experience that just completely knocked me and my co-host Eric Spitz of Films for the Void, the podcast I have, on our asses. We were the only ones in the theater, and I don't know if we would have been able to survive the film if we weren't able to actively talk to each other while we were watching this film. Like, holy shit the entire time.
That sounds like a fun experience.
It was a very fun experience, and I can't wait. I own it on Blu-ray. I haven't rewatched it, but it's awesome movie. It's also on Hulu, so if you have Hulu,
I did see that.
It is worth.
Yeah, because when I watched it, I had to rent it because I watched it. I want to say last spring or summer. I don't remember. It was a while ago. I rented it on Amazon. I did really enjoy it, or maybe it was even in the fall. I don't know. The year blends together. Who knows?
Just incredible movie that I can't recommend enough.
Well, all right, Landon, we've been talking for over 2 hours, man. I didn't think it would go that long, but
my back hurts and my voice hurts, but
my lower back's getting sore here. So we're going to go ahead and wrap this up here. Thank you for listening along. We appreciate you. If you made it through the full 2 hours plus here of us talking about some of our favorite and a few of our least favorite movies of 2021, appreciate you. Obviously, make sure you check out. I'll have links for Landon and his podcast, Films for the Void, in the description. Make sure you check his socials out, as well as his socials. They have a Twitter page for Films for the Void, and I'll have the information for his podcast there as well that him and Eric do. They do a great job. I enjoy listening to their podcast, and I will have links in the description for anything you want to check out for me, social media, as well as make sure you subscribe here on YouTube to the Film Nerd Podcast, and check us out, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Appreciate you listening along. Landon, thanks for joining.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to chat about the movies that mean the most to me this year. So much appreciated. Thank you, Vince.
Absolutely. Episode 34. I'm Vince, guest Landon, Film Nerd Podcast. Go watch some movies.
I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
I feel the need for speed.
Roads? Where we're going, we don't need roads.
Snakes. Why did it have to be snakes?